I'm with the Sam Nunn School of International Affairs at Georgia Tech, and I am on this webinar with our Executive Director of APSIA, the Association of Professional Schools of International Affairs. We're having a bit of technical difficulty getting us all together, but I wanted to go ahead and get started so that as we work out our technical difficulties, you would be able to follow along. As Carmen indicated earlier, if you have questions that come to you while we're doing our presentation, please feel free to enter those into the main chat box, and we will respond to those at the end of our presentation. But I will go ahead and just get started on our presentation now. So you're here at the It's All Global Now, helping students prepare for a global marketplace webinar. And again, I'm Stephanie Jackson. I have been here at Georgia Tech with the Sam Nunn School of International Affairs for going on 13 years now. I started here as what was known as an international plan advisor. And the international plan is a program that is designed to build international competence within the undergraduate degrees here at Georgia Tech. From that role, I moved on, and I'm currently the Assistant Director of Advising and Professional Development. And so what that means is that I work with our undergraduate students, both the majors and the minors, as well as our graduate students on their career development. My particular background is that I have a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in international development studies. So it helps me and prepares me to work with this particular student population that I work with. So again, like I said, I'm glad to work with you. So when we talk about what our students are interested in, how we can help them to better prepare for the global workplace. So what are we hearing from the students that we are talking to? In your advising conversations, what topics or interests do students express passion around? So some of the more common ideas that they might express are an interest in travel, culture, and language. So this can be study abroad, or learning or developing language proficiency, engaging other cultures and other manners of doing business, working abroad, etc. They might also express an interest in tackling big problems like poverty, environment, and disease. So an interest in responding to and solving societal ills through practical and policy efforts. They may have an interest in politics and government. This could be representing constituencies, representing government. This can be through diplomacy, intelligence, or local, state, and federal opportunities. They may like to debate or argue. There may be competing philosophies or evolving ideologies they like to share. They may be interested in philosophical debate, law, or constitutional issues. I remember I had a student that was really into religious ideology studies. He had left me a quote that said, "Religions and belief systems have always interested me because they are a direct reflection of a culture's values. Embedded in some of the world's oldest religions are thousands of years of philosophical debate and ideological evolution. Every day, I get the opportunity to interact with students from these different ideologies and cultures because tech students come from all over the country and the world. My interactions with these students only further my belief that understanding breeds cooperation." So he was studying economics and international affairs, and from there he learned the data analysis needed for economics and the critical thinking that comes with majoring in international affairs. For him, these particular disciplines allowed him to see how economics can motivate international policy and international relations can drive economic decisions. Then students might also indicate they have a call to service, to helping people. So that can be expressed through volunteering or teaching abroad, service learning, or just thinking how all of that translates into social impact. Students may have a desire to see social change, human rights, human trafficking, social justice movements, and other forms of social activism. Or what we like to call, I like this but not that. These are students who are explorers. They're curious, they have a passion to innovate. They might be driven by the prospect of global opportunity. I think of another example of an alumnus who told me that I learned how to identify, analyze, and solve problems, to think critically, analytically, and creatively. This has served me well, especially working on corporate and investment banking transactions, as well as forays into internet startups, real estate, and other business ventures. So, all this means that there are a variety of different interests that our students may come to us with. And as advisors, we want to guide them in channeling these into potential careers. And regardless of the majors they may have selected, all of these interests can have a global component and can be explored in the framework of a global workplace. So most students are very surprised at the flexibility that can come with any major. So a degree in engineering can lead to a career in finance, while a history degree can lead to a job in the healthcare field. Often I am asked, and I'm sure you are, what can I do with this major? And I talk with students about the connection between majors and career choices. There are some straight lines from one major to one particular career, particularly with some of the technical degrees in STEM-related fields. But increasingly, employers are seeking candidates that do not often use major as a criterion for accepting applications. Often, it is internships and full-time positions that are posted undergrad that are open to all majors or a diverse range of majors. But all of that said, on this slide, we're taking a look at the different majors, interests, and careers with a variety of examples of positions and jobs and the majors and interests that can lead to those particular careers. On this slide, I want to point out the range of disciplines that are listed here. Majors in the humanities, in the social sciences, as well as in science and engineering fields. Many careers, even down to the local level, have an international component to them. As an example, I have an alum from our graduate program who has a master's degree in international relations, and she worked for the city of Atlanta, what is surely considered a local job. Her role as Deputy Director of the Office of International Affairs, and she is charged with maintaining the city's relationships with the international community, promoting international trade opportunities, encouraging foreign direct investment, and also raising the global profile of the city of Atlanta. So while her job is local, it is inherently international, very big global impact. And all of these careers or positions that are listed here can be obtained with a degree or training in international relations. I want to give you a couple of examples of untraditional paths to internationally oriented careers. So one of my former students who has a master's now of international affairs was recently hired as the Public Affairs and Communications for International Government Relations Associate at Coca-Cola. So he obtained this position after a stint as an intern in the company's public affairs department. And before that, he had interned with the Carter Center. But even before he started our graduate program, he had earned his undergraduate degree in music education. I was a music teacher and a program director in Atlanta area schools for about 5 or 6 years. He had lived abroad in Thailand and he had developed some foreign language proficiency. And he'd also done some volunteer work with NGOs in Mexico, Uganda, and Botswana. So through these experiences, he developed a skill set in management, communication, independent and collaborative work, as well as in intercultural, interpersonal skill development. He says, and I quote, "I use my graduate school experience daily, evaluating business environments, tracking socio-political events and the impact they have on our business, understanding the various political processes around the world, and understanding how our business has adapted to the varied countries that we are a part of are all elements of my job where I use the skills and knowledge I gained at the Nunn School." I have another alumnus who is an information security analyst at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Before she got her master's in international affairs, she had earned a minor in computer science and completed a computer science study abroad program in Spain while she was earning her undergraduate degree in economics. She had interned with the Committee on Homeland Security, both in the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, and was awarded a National Science Foundation scholarship to pursue a career in cybersecurity, cyber diplomacy. And that helped to cover the cost for her graduate degree. So her aim was to develop the skills necessary to be what she called a, quote, future leader with a full understanding of not only the technical side of cyberspace, but also the economic and policy side, to assist our nation's policymakers and international leaders on how to mutually secure our physical and cyberspace borders and critical infrastructure. And if I may plug APSIA resource here for you to share with your students, the career directors at the APSIA institutions, along with our APSIA staff, have curated something we call the International Career Guide, which can be viewed from the APSIA website. And on this career guide, it breaks down the different options in the global workplace by sector and also by subject area. So each section provides a brief description as well as samples of employers, tips to gaining employment in that sector, and key skill sets and experiences that have become most competitive in that field. So when you get a chance, please check out that website, and I think Carmen has just placed it in the chat box for you to see. And please share that with your students. So thinking about career options. So studying a single discipline is no longer enough. An interdisciplinary, intercultural, multilingual education is becoming necessary these days to advance in the global workplace. An interdisciplinary field like international affairs prepares students for a variety of career paths. So as you see listed here on this slide, we have communications, media, public relations, business and consulting, development and conflict resolution, energy and the environment, education, human rights and law, science and technology, security and intelligence. And these are some of the more prevalent career paths from this field. While historically it is thought that international relations is equivalent to government, and a lot of my students, when they begin our undergraduate program, want to work for a government organization like the State Department or the UN. According to our research at APSIA, approximately 31% of our graduates ended up in the private sector in 2017. The private sector is the largest employer of our graduates, followed then by the government and public sector, and then by nonprofit, NGO, and other multilateral organizations. So when we talk about government agencies, that includes the U.S. Department of State, the Department of Defense, Homeland, and Intelligence agencies, plus other agencies like agriculture or commerce, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, education, energy, transportation, treasury, etc. There has been some uncertainty over time about hiring and budget cuts, but there is a strong interest in national security in the government. So interest in government should also not exclude local government opportunities. State and national offices, as I gave an example earlier. And another example that most people rarely think of is government may also be working for a royal family. Or in other nations, or in other consular offices and embassies of other countries. Nonprofit organizations or NGOs may include organizations like the American Bar Association, CARE, the Center for International Private Enterprise, Habit for Humanity, Catholic Relief Services, and other foundations around the world. When we think of for-profit companies or private industry, we think of Anheuser-Busch, Bank of America, Coke, Deloitte, GE, Google, Home Depot, the Walt Disney Company, Fleishman-Hillard, PNC, and things of that nature. Intergovernmental organizations include the World Bank, the United Nations, the European Union, etc. And there are other organizations. A lot of students are interested in entrepreneurship, and some have gone on to start their own companies in the travel or tourism industry, in global health and sanitation programs, global commerce and technology initiatives, and the like. So the world is open to students. There are particular skills, however, that are necessary to find success in this global workplace. And speaking of this conversation about skills, particularly the skill set of younger workers, they are being prepared for today's global workplace amongst the employers and career services offices across this country. NACE, which is the National Association of Colleges and Employers, refers to this as career readiness, or the competencies that can prepare college graduates for a successful transition to the workplace. Anecdotally, I can tell you that employers I talk to emphasize the importance of soft skills as key to hiring and then eventual success and promotion on the job. That is communication, that's teamwork, having a problem solving orientation, emotional intelligence. These are the key abilities that employers are screening for. And it's imperative that we help our students find ways to develop these skills throughout their college careers. For careers in international relations, I'd like to point out a few that would give them an edge in the global workplace. So the first box we have up here is professional experience. This can be found locally, it can be found online, nationally, internationally. Exposure and experience in the world of work to understand what it's like working in a given industry, organization, or a particular job. Students want to be able to demonstrate personal accountability and effective work habits. That's through punctuality, working productively with others, time, workload management, the ability to learn from mistakes, etc. The next one is communication skills. So having excellent written and verbal communication skills, the ability to write in various forms. So that's doing briefing papers, memos, research papers, reports, white papers, etc. Also to have strong public speaking and presentation ability. Proficiency in more than one language or having an aptitude for learning additional languages is also important. This is tied to global and intercultural fluency and the ability to value, respect, and learn from diverse perspectives. Then there are analytical and quantitative skills. This is the ability to obtain, interpret, and use knowledge, facts, and data from human capital and other business elements. This includes critical thinking and problem solving, and the ability to use sound reasoning to analyze issues, make decisions, and overcome problems. Technical skills is really about leveraging the existing digital technologies and adaptability to new and emerging technologies ethically and efficiently to solve problems, to complete tasks, and accomplish goals. So this includes skills in graphic design, social media, data analysis, coding, computer programming, geographic information systems, modeling, and the like. Understanding project management includes leveraging strengths and skills to organize, prioritize, and delegate. It also entails building collaborative relationships and working within a team structure in the stages of managing a particular project or program. Students don't necessarily need the PMP certification at the start of their career, but should be familiar with the initiation, planning, execution, launch, control, track, and delivery close mechanisms of project management. And then lastly, is networking. You want to create a network, your own personal advisory board. So having mentors, coaches, peers that they can bounce ideas with, industry contacts or insiders, to develop relationship building habits to build a network, which can be key to their career management. So all of these are critical skills and abilities we should be advising our students to learn more of. So next, in the next slide, I'll share ways that students can go learning about these skills. And again, if anybody has questions about any of this information, please feel free to enter that in the chat box and we'll respond to those questions at the end of our presentation. So where do students build these skills? We encourage our students to, one, get internships. Having hands-on experience that is gained during college is the most critical hiring variable. The more internship experience gained, the better. Of course, we don't want that to interfere with them completing their degrees. However, if they can get 2 or 3 internships completed, that will make them that much more competitive for full-time positions. Getting published is a great way to showcase their excellent communication skills, verbal and written. Many students run academic undergraduate journals out there, and research opportunities with faculty can also lead to being published. Social media outlets may also provide opportunities. What recruiters are looking for are strong writing skills that can be developed through being published. So, developing skill in writing clear, concise communications is something that comes with practice. And being published can contribute to their personal brand. Students can showcase their knowledge in a particular area that may be of interest to a certain company. I want to share an example of another one of our students that developed an interest in fair trade and sustainable investment. She had begun to flesh out this interest through papers and assignments in her courses and had done considerable research with faculty to get published. She was able to refer back to her portfolio of writing and work in this area during interviews as a Presidential Management Fellow finalist and was offered a Presidential Management Fellowship position with the Department of Commerce in their International Trade Administration. Also, pursuing a minor or certificate or an additional major. So students can take courses outside of the primary major and develop a concentration. Employers may view this additional breadth as a benefit. If a student is studying an engineering or technical discipline, a minor in business or a foreign language would be attractive for global employers. Or if a student is studying in the liberal arts, a minor in business or communications and digital media would be an attractive specialization. Increasingly, employers are looking for candidates that stand out, and so having a specialization is one manner of doing so. Study or travel abroad. So learning a language is important. There are fellowship programs that offer funding for international experiences, be it study abroad or internships, and they may also pay for graduate school or professional intern or traineeship experiences with governments or non-governmental offices. And these provide valuable benefit and also bring prestige to one's resume. It's important to lead something. So have some sort of executive board level position, be a president of an organization or a director of a committee, etc. That is preferred over just membership in an organization. However, extracurricular participation is looked upon favorably, regardless of it. As long as you have it, it's looked upon favorably. So this is basically evidence of your ability to work in teams, to manage others, to manage budgets, how you manage programs and your time, etc. And then students should also find ways to get involved in international or global themed events or organizations on and off campus. They can participate in International Education Week. They can join Model UN. They can apply for a traineeship with ISIC or ISDA. They can join a campus club on culture and language or a topic of interest, maybe it's sustainability or human rights, etc. Students can also join professional organizations and take advantage of the student rate and young professional networks. They can network with alumni. They can talk to professors and make connections. All of this is practice for polishing their interpersonal skills. So, as advisors, our role is to guide students to make wise choices to maximize the time in college. In working with our undergraduates, there is a timeline to this. And not many students are able to secure internships in the first year of school, but they may be able to study abroad or start a new language. So it's important to craft a timeline to build upon skills and assess their career readiness throughout their years of college. As they take coursework, they can develop an interest in a particular minor or begin to formulate an interest in a research topic that they can cover throughout different courses. In effect, they are developing expertise. And they can join organizations early on as a member and take on increasing responsibility and use that experience to build connections and network with other leaders and organizations. As they begin to search and then interview for internships, they have experience that they can talk about: leadership, language, research, study abroad. With additional internships, they become more competitive for full-time positions. So our immediate goal is to prepare students for that first job out of school. Yet we also want to equip them with helpful strategies to navigate upward in this increasingly competitive global market. And that could include graduate school as a strategy. If not right after finishing the undergraduate degree, perhaps after a few years before. And with that, I'll ask Carmen to talk a little bit more about if the decision is made to pursue a graduate degree and how to proceed.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Hopefully you all can hear me now and that we fixed the challenge with the sound. As Stephanie said, many of your students may come to understand that graduate school is one of those increasingly necessary pieces as they chart their global career. The workforce and the competitive marketplace now are global, much like the jobs that your students will be competing for. And so the earlier they can start to think through some critical questions and build graduate school into their timeline, the more effective they can be when application time comes. We can talk later, if you all would like, about the specific timeline, meaning how long after an undergraduate degree graduate school may make sense. But as we look through the next few slides, we'd like to offer you some tips and ways that you can help them shape their thinking. First, of course, is helping them understand when and whether they should go to graduate school. And we suggest 5 questions that you can pose to them as a way to sharpen and shape their thinking. Helping them understand what they want to study, what the structure of a program looks like, whether it's highly flexible, highly prescriptive, or somewhere along that continuum, and where their interests lie and what they need that structure to look like. If you have a student who assumes they have to get a certain kind of professional degree, but when they look at that academic structure, the curriculum, the structure doesn't match anything about what they're interested in or want to do, they may need to pursue a different type of professional program or a different type of degree. Helping students understand their level of qualification, what they need to do to be ready to apply to a particular graduate school, prompting them to think about the kinds of prerequisite courses or experiences they're going to need, the sorts of prep they will need for the LSAT, the GRE, the GMAT, whatever standardized test might be required in a particular discipline. And also helping students level set the programs that are going to be a bit of a stretch application for them and the programs where they're going to be really solid and highly competitive. Most graduate schools are going to list their average GRE scores, GPA, years of experience, number of languages spoken, all of those kinds of prerequisite classes. So getting students to think ahead to say, if these are the kinds of programs I'm looking for, this is the skill set I'm going to need, this is the place I'm going to need to be academically and professionally before I even apply, enables them to backtrack and build in all of those touchstones along the way. Also prompting them to think beyond solely the academic experience or even just the name of a program. If you have a student who loves city life and the hustle and bustle and being in a really multicultural environment or a very diverse place, prompting them to think about schools and places in cities rather than a more rural environment or suburban environment is going to also help ensure that they have a healthy experience outside of solely the academic program. And vice versa, if you have a student who couldn't possibly fathom living in a city with all of that hustle and bustle and all of those things, steering them away from schools that might be in Tokyo or London or Paris or DC might also be an important part of ensuring their professional and personal success as part of this intense training program. Helping them think through their financial situation. There are lots of ways that students can pay for graduate school, as well as all of those other opportunities that Stephanie talked about earlier, but making sure that they build that planning into their consideration and into their thinking. Stephanie and I both know, unfortunately, so many students who they go through the whole application process and they apply and they get in, and only then does it occur to them that they need to start thinking about paying for school. And it's just far too late because they've missed the deadlines for merit-based aid. They've missed the deadlines for all sorts of different scholarships. So getting them to do those two pieces simultaneously can be an important service that you provide to them, whether they recognize your value in that or not. And I would say the most important question you can challenge students with on this list is the question about professional fit and what's next. As Stephanie talked about, there's so many different opportunities that can be woven together for a globally focused career, but getting them to use an important measuring stick, looking at job descriptions and the kinds of skill sets they need to build within a particular program to be competitive for jobs. Talking to alumni about opportunities and things they're glad they did and wish they had done, prompting them and encouraging them to do informational interviews, to gather some of that basic skill set knowledge that then they can use to measure programs against, to say, I need this kind of tool, that kind of tool, and this other kind of tool. Will I get it in this program? And it's not about forcing them into a box or insisting that they have only one career in mind when they're finished. But the point of a graduate program, a professional program, is to master something. So helping them shape their thinking around what it is that they actually wish to master can be really important as they think through this kind of investment and all of that immediate future skill set planning. So also, as they start along this path, prompting them to think about the kinds of materials they're going to need to put in place and provide. Obviously, there's going to be application forms and fees, and they hopefully can handle that on their own. But getting them to think through what's on their resume and all of those experiences Stephanie talked about, publishing, internships, volunteer opportunities, leadership roles, all of that is going to build out their competitiveness for a graduate school program. Reminding them that if they do study abroad or take courses or came in with AP credits, they're going to need transcripts from each institution that they've attended. They're also going to need to prep for those standardized tests. And then I think two of the critical pieces here where you can help to shape their thinking are really around their personal statements and essays, but also their letters of recommendation, reminding them that their relationships with faculty don't end on the day of commencement, that they need to cultivate those relationships long term. If they had a great internship, staying in touch with that supervisor, building those ties over time so that when it comes to the moment when they have to request a letter of recommendation, it's not a completely cold phone call, and they can reconnect and rekindle that conversation with a faculty member, with a supervisor, to really put forward a strong letter of recommendation for graduate school. So giving them these strategies so that they don't 2 years down the line think, oh, shoot, I have to reconnect with Professor so-and-so. Building that again into their timeline, into their post-undergraduate planning as a way of getting them to think about circling back. And in particular, when they think about their essays and their personal statements, schools want to see and hear about the student's journey, sometimes with all of the warts and ups and downs that come with it, but getting them to think about how their distinct narrative is really a story that only they can tell. It's the sort of situation where, and I'm sure you all have encountered these students, you read 15 of the same essay. They all sound the same. They all start with the same motivational Nelson Mandela quote or whatever. Our schools experience the same thing reading thousands of graduate school applications. But getting your students to tell and to talk about their narrative journey is something that only they can do and will really help them stand out when they truly are application 1005 out of the 2,000 that some of our schools have to read. So helping them sharpen their thinking about the kinds of experiences they've had in the past. Work, life, volunteering, coursework, that study abroad, anything that happened before that shapes who they were and very much informs who they are, why they want to go into this particular line of work, why they want to study this particular topic at that particular school, how all of those experiences, like I said, good, bad, ugly, striving, those examples of resilience when they had trouble freshman year, whatever it is, those things about who they were that influence who they are and shape who it is that they want to be. Why this school? Why this program? Why this future line of work? And how that graduate experience is hopefully a springboard into that future version of themselves. So helping them compartmentalize, for lack of a better word, those aspects of their narrative, and then getting them to build their outline or their framework of an essay that talks about those three parts of the journey, who they were, who they are, and who they want to be, will really help craft a personal statement that tells a distinct story and separates them from all of the other students. So the more they can do that and the more you can help them build out those pieces of themselves, the stronger they'll be, particularly for graduate school personal essays. One of the common questions that I hear is looking and wondering what it is that schools are looking for. And I ask you to remind and encourage your students that there really isn't necessarily one number that's going to get you in to a particular school or a number that's going to keep you out. We always stress to students that the admissions criteria and qualifications that are published online are often averages. So having a student understand that schools do look at these things holistically, and the kinds of things they're looking for revolve around a student's aptitude for study. That's why they're going to want to see transcripts and writing samples and letters of recommendation from faculty. They want to get a clear sense of a student's professional direction. And again, that's why they want their resume. That's why they want that narrative. That's why they want your personal statements to talk about professional goals and objectives. They want to make sure that the student is set up for success during the program and after the program. But the other key component that a lot of students miss is understanding how that particular student is going to contribute to everybody else's academic and professional success. What perspective does that student bring into the classroom that no one else can bring, that's going to elevate the conversation and help everyone else to succeed academically and professionally? So if you have a student who's trying to bring together that technical background and the policy background that Stephanie talked about, or IT and international affairs, how is that a really interesting perspective to have in courses that are going to enable everyone else's experience to be enriched? So getting students to see maybe that challenge they had freshman year, or the family obstacles that they've overcome, or academic interests and professional interests and volunteer work or refugee work, faith community things, whatever it is that they can bring into a classroom that will help enrich the experience for everyone else. So all of those pieces really do come together when schools are reading essays and applications as they try to put together the strongest class that they can to benefit all of the students in that classroom. And we'll open up to questions in just a minute, so please feel free to type whatever you hear from students or common things that you get that you'd like to hear Stephanie's wisdom on. But one other piece I wanted to share with all of you, APSIA, as Stephanie mentioned, has as many resources as we can to tell the story of what you can do in this global marketplace with degrees focused on these international issues, whether it is traditional fields like defense, diplomacy, or development, or the private sector, nonprofits, education. So we encourage you to share these opportunities with your students if you can, and when a student comes to you, perhaps to refer them here as a place for further research. We do a webinar each month with best practices in applying to graduate school, and you can see the link there for students to register. The last one of 2018 is actually tomorrow. My colleague will be hosting that. We also have a filterable directory of fellowships and scholarships, where if they're looking to pay for graduate school, looking to pay for study abroad or research experiences abroad or domestically, there's a lot of opportunities there. We have profiles on all of our schools where they can learn a little bit more about different programs and opportunities. And then as Stephanie mentioned, we have the career guide that unpacks different sectors and segments, gives some tips and recommends some different employers. Through our different channels, we publish as many different internship and job and fellowship opportunities as can. We love to tell student, alumni, and faculty stories. So we hopefully provide a good base of resources for you to offer to your students as they and you try to navigate this space. So with that, let's open the floor up for questions. If there's anything in particular you'd like to hear about or reflect on, frequent things you get from students, please let us know. Stephanie, since my microphone works and nobody else's does, and I get the privilege of the first question, I'd be curious to hear from you how many of your undergraduate students, how early they start thinking about this process. Do you engage them as freshmen in planning for their career 5 years out, or how do you guide these students who are often just trying to get acclimated to university life in general?
Sure, sure. So yes, we actually do engage them as freshmen. Um, we in the School of International Affairs, we actually have a careers class that is targeting our freshmen. They take it in their second semester. And the intention of that course is to just introduce them to the variety of particular options they might have if they're studying international affairs. As I mentioned earlier, most of my undergrads come in, they think they want to work for the State Department or the UN. You know, they might have been in Model UN in high school and they want to do some kind of work around that when they think that's what they want to do when they graduate. So the intention of this course is to start them thinking early about different options. And so that course is offered, like I said, the first year as freshmen. But Georgia Tech as a whole offers an orientation to Georgia Tech course where we start talking about career development as freshmen as well. In that course, they do a lot more of the mechanics of your job search and getting your resume together, your cover letters, and some networking more so than looking at particular fields. But we certainly start that process very, very early here with our undergraduate students. And then, so we start that process in our first year, and then throughout their 3 or 4 years here at Georgia Tech, there are other opportunities that we engage them through um, speaker series, or we'll have employer information sessions, or we'll have graduate schools or fellowship programs come and talk about their opportunities. And of course, freshmen through graduate students are always invited to learn about these different things, and so they can prepare themselves accordingly.
And for anyone who might be thinking, well, I don't have a formal course or anything along those lines that I can tap into with students, what would you recommend to them? And I'll preempt that a little bit by saying anyone who's interested in hosting a guest speaker, either from APSIA itself, any of our member schools, or our partners, like some of the fellowship programs, even the State Department, we're happy to build those connections if that would be useful. But how would you encourage staff or advisors who don't have that formal structure to still continue to engage with students?
To hopefully work with their campus career office. If the particular departments or advisors don't have those connections, hopefully their campus career office will. A lot of times, particularly for government agencies or government opportunities, there are federal liaisons that work with a variety of different campuses across the country. And they would certainly be able to maybe offer some advice or assistance in making applications for federal opportunities. But also to consider partnering with associations. And so even the Career Center, as I mentioned, there's an association called NACE, the National Association for Careers and Employers. If your Career Center is a member of that organization or has staff members who participate with that organization, they have access to experts and organizations and other folks that they can possibly bring to campus to do some of that kind of orientation to careers for students.
Have you found any luck working with faculty in any of these questions? Or have they been just a different beast?
There's been some. I think particularly faculty, if they have connections with particular agencies or they have connections with alumni. Sometimes alumni stay in touch with faculty better than they stay in touch with staff. And so that may be one way to connect with some alumni that might be in a particular field that a student may express interest in. Or a particular research area that a student may express interest in. So those are some ways that faculty can really become more hands-on involved in the student's career development through, the research interest or particular alumni association or alumni connections as well. But we also have some faculty come speak to our they speak to our careers courses, particularly if they are involved in some of our study abroad or experiential learning programs. So we have faculty directors who direct some of our study abroad, and they talk about the opportunities that they have in other countries. They also speak about particular internships that they might be able to line up while they're on the study abroad or these other overseas experiences. And so that's another way to learn about some of the opportunities that may exist in talking to faculty that might do study abroad or be involved with some of the other experiential learning or living learning communities, other things that are on campus as well.
So some of the things that you mentioned to help students gain experience, internships, study abroad, those sorts of things can be financially out of reach for some students. Do you have advice on ways that students can either talk about the jobs or the paid work that they do and match that to skill sets, or opportunities for students who maybe can't afford to take 6 months and move to DC to work for free, ways they can build up their skill sets?
Certainly. A student can certainly be working at Chuck E. Cheese, or if we like to say, working at the local DSW or Foot Locker, and still be able to speak about that in a way that is relevant on their resumes and then also in interviews. And so it's about the soft skills that I talked about earlier, and whatever job that they might hold, and if it's something that's helping to pay their college tuition or pay some of their school expenses, they can still use those experiences to talk about how they're relevant to whatever they might be interested in. So it could be the soft skills in communication or in teamwork, how they work with their coworkers. It could be other soft skills in terms of how they delegate, if they have a managerial or leadership role in that particular job, or time management, program management, things of that nature. So there are ways to discuss that if they're unable to take the time off, or an unpaid internship is just not acceptable for them, to use their existing work experience, or just leadership experience on campus. So I talked about involvement earlier. So if you're unable to do an unpaid internship, but you do have time to work with a student group on campus, how are you involved with that student group? It should probably be more than just a membership. But if you find a way to be involved in some sort of leadership, as a member, as a leader of a committee, or a director of a particular program or event, that's a way that you can build skill sets that you can talk about on your resume. If you're managing a particular budget for an event, or if you're managing the logistics and the supplies for getting an event created, those are all skills that can be used to be talked about on your resume or in graduate school applications that are relevant.
Two other really useful opportunities that I've found that are virtual. The U.S. State Department coordinates the Virtual Student Foreign Service, the VSFS, which enables students to work on unclassified projects for, I think it's up to 17 different federal agencies from the comfort of their jammies in their dorm room. So all of it's done online, and it's a great way for students who can't come to Washington or take the time off to intern virtually. And similarly, the UN Volunteer Corps on their website, which is unv.org, lists a variety of online projects or internships so students can build out experience on their own timetable and have some deliverables to talk about in interviews or in grad school applications while contributing to something larger than themselves. But again, it can be done on the student's own schedule, online, from wherever they happen to find themselves. So for those of you who perhaps aren't in hubs that are awash with internships, those kinds of opportunities can be really useful. There's also a few other organizations, including us, that offer remote internships where we don't particularly care where a student is based as long as they're going to do good work for us. So there's a lot of those sorts of possibilities that are there for students too. We have about 9 minutes left, so if there's anything you all have heard, challenges you've had convincing those around you that students do need to prepare for a global marketplace, now's a great time. Stephanie, obviously you're based at a School of International Affairs, but what kinds of conversations do you have with a central university where people may not be as tuned into these sorts of global skill sets as our colleagues at the IR school might be?
I think it's very important to have a really good relationship with your central career office. So that you can certainly share resources or share contacts, maybe collaborate on a particular event, support each other in those endeavors. So I think that is key in finding the best ways to support your students. And so, here at Georgia Tech, I certainly work with our career services office. They have certainly attended or participated in some of our careers classes. They've done sessions for us on job search strategy. They've done sessions on resumes and cover letters. And then, we invite them to our events when we have speakers come in, or we, particularly when we have alumni. We had an event this fall. We have certain one-off events. We had a big event on opportunities in big data security. We have events when we have speakers from USAID or the State Department come, and we certainly invite their professionals in the Career Center to come participate and learn a little bit more about how our students are pursuing opportunities in these fields. So it's important to keep everybody in the loop. I think that's important in developing those relationships. And like I said, they certainly, if they might be members of NACE or other organizations that can bring in other employers that you as a department might not already be connected with. That's important in terms of relationship building. And speaking of that, I wanted to ask you a question, Carmen. Can you speak to a little bit more about when we talk about organizations that young students who might be interested in international affairs might be able to participate with or join? Do you have any suggestions for people who might have an interest in global careers? What organizations that might have young professionals memberships or emerging leaders memberships they might be interested in finding out more about?
Sure. So in terms of professional societies, Young Professionals in Foreign Policy is a wonderful worldwide network of truly, I think, 20,000 young professionals across the globe. They have a variety of hubs, but in particular, no matter where a student or a young professional is, they give the chance for folks to publish, they give the chance for folks to lead different projects. So it can be another great way to build some of those skill sets while being in a supportive community. There's lots of groups that have chapter-based organizations where they're asking students to work on global issues by activating their peers. And in particular, I'm thinking of groups like the One Campaign's Campus Network, the Oxfam Change Initiative, Ashoka's Leadership Initiative. All of these are ways for the students to bring global issues to campus. The Fair Trade Universities campaign, there's Amnesty's campaign, lots of ways to have students, again, build leadership, have a deliverable, but by championing a particular global issue on their campus. There's also chapters of things like the Sigma Iota Rho International Affairs Honors Society, where faculty in particular, but it doesn't have to be, can start a chapter of SIR that also gives students the chance to publish their research in a journal that's reviewed. It gives them access to advisor content, students the opportunity to go to conferences. So there's a lot of these different kinds of initiatives that are trying to connect national chapters with what happens locally. And it might really depend on the issue that a particular student cares about: poverty, human trafficking, social enterprise, hunger, famine, war, peace. There's a million of these kinds of groups that are looking to connect with students. Also, often campuses have a Peace Corps recruiter, so someone whose job it is to talk about the Peace Corps if you have students who are looking for some international experience but perhaps maybe can't get it as an undergrad or want to enhance it after they finish. And the entire United States, for those of you who are in the U.S., the whole U.S. is divided into 16 territories, which are covered by what are called diplomats in residence. So if you visit the State Department's website, and if I get a chance and my brain and my fingers can do two separate things, I'll post that link as well. But the State Department lists what diplomat covers what part of the U.S., and so you can reach out to that person who is a career foreign service officer, this is one of their rotations, and invite that person to come to campus. It's part of the service, so there's no fee for him or her to come. And then they can come and talk about careers in foreign affairs or even a particular substantive issue. But all of you have a DIR who covers your region of the country, and so you can reach out to that person and engage them in your campus life, again, as just a free resource to bring this sort of content to your students. Thank you, Stephanie. They also have the ability to request speakers of expertise. So again, if you have that student who really cares about a particular issue, they can lead the ability to have a featured speaker come and talk about religious freedom or any of the topics Stephanie touched on. So there's lots of ways for students to get really practical experience on campus doing this kind of work, and for you to complement that by engaging some free speakers or free resources. So we have about 3 minutes left. If there's any other questions, you all can see my email address on your screen. Please feel free to reach out if you have questions or if something we've talked about went by too fast and you didn't have time to capture it. These slides will be available. If you'd like to send me an email, I'm happy to send them to you. And we will have a recording of this conversation on our YouTube page. We're also happy to schedule a presentation like this just with me, knowing how crazy Stephanie's life is, for other advisors or faculty on your campus. If you'd like to evangelize this message to others on your campus, we also do that monthly webinar on grad school practice, often as one-offs for campuses. So we very much look forward to partnering with you and helping you deliver more of this content for your students on your campus or for your colleagues, because we know that as the marketplace becomes even more interconnected and more global, this is how your students need to be ready for the jobs, for the opportunities that are coming. They need those skill sets. They need to see how complex and interwoven the world is, and so the more we can do to support them in that endeavor, the better, and the more we can do to support you, the more we'd like to help. So I'm not seeing any more questions, so I will wrap up. Stephanie, thank you so much. As always, you have so many wonderful personal experiences and so much wisdom to share, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you literally just got off a plane like yesterday, so you sound so fresh and invigorated. I also want to thank all of you for joining us today and navigating a bit of the technical difficulties, and I look forward to continuing the conversation with you down the line. Thank you.
Thank you.